It seemed like half of Owltown had seen the strange lights in the sky all spring and summer. But I wouldn't be one of them. I was what you call a skeptic, you see, and a grade A capital S one of the highest order. I believed. You see what you want to see. At least I did anyway. To say I was shocked to hear from Kay was an understatement, considering 2 months ago she broke my heart into smithereens and danced on the pieces. Not to say I didn't have it coming. I broke hers first, after all. To be perfectly honest, I missed her terribly. And I wasn't finding any solace in the bottom of a bottle either. But Kay found solace in the skies. In the Sky Children, to be exact. One of several social groups to have popped up around Owltown since the sightings first began. Kay was what you called New Age. Earthy, like a flower that could never be plucked. It was why I fell in love with her. It's why I still am. But her joining a UFO cult was never in a million years in my crystal ball. Then again, neither were these strange lights, which Mayor Rank predictably dismissed as naturally occurring solar events. But if going to a Sky Children meeting with a bunch of cranks was my one and only shot at a second chance with Kay, it was one I was willing, no, I had to take. I recognized the neighborhood from Channel 2 News, always a bad sign, especially when on your way to a stranger's house for a cult meeting. But when her smiling Kay came out to greet me, beaming just as radiant as the day we met, everything else faded away. It felt like first love, and in this teenaged, trance-like state, I failed to notice the lanky, gray-haired man in green standing grim-faced behind. He was known only as Steve. The meeting was held in Steve's basement, and he wore green, he explained to the half a dozen of us assembled, because it's the visitors' favorite life shade. He'd had a vision, you see. I turned to look at Kay, her wide eyes like an open sky beckoning me to believe. And so, at that moment, I'm not too proud to say, I decided to pretend to. As summer faded to fall, news of the sightings slowed to a stop. One by one, groups sprouted in their honor, wilted in the winter chill. All except one. The Sky Children. And when Steve instructed us all to wear green, and then live together in a giant rented mansion, it wasn't long before we began to attract significant media attention. We became a sensation. All over the world, people wanted to interview the Sky Children, me included. Friends and family began calling at all hours, worried I'd been brainwashed by a dangerous cult. How could I tell them I was living a lie, all for an increasingly lost love? Because try as I might, I began to realize that Kay was slipping away from me, deeper into whatever this was becoming. I considered leaving the Sky Children, just vanishing in the night. But after all of this, how could I break her heart all over again? She thought the visitors could save us, could save me. Who was I to tell her she was wrong? And that's when a curious thing began to happen. It's not that I began to believe, but I began to wonder. Eventually, after the late-night comics ran out of material, the public lost interest in the Sky Children. And just as a rainy spring turned into a red-hot Owltown summer, Steve had his final vision. The visitors would soon arrive. They had come to him in a dream, and even told him the exact date, the Total Eclipse. But it would be a brief visit, and they would be bringing back some very precious cargo. Us. The Sky Children. Despite the enthusiastic cheers and tears from my fellow children, I was nervous to say the least. Any belief I had that this could be real had been long abandoned. Any wonder was now totally eclipsed by the fear that our shepherd Steve was leaving his flock right off a cliff. On the eve of the eclipse, the children's fervor grew to a fever pitch. At high noon, we'd follow Steve to Altown's highest point, Wood Grove Cemetery, where the city's elites were buried below a vast canopy of open sky. And luckily for us and the visitors' navigation team, the day's forecast was crystal clear. After a peculiar pancake breakfast, the Sky Children packed into the van and set out for Wood Grove, eyes shining with hope as big as life, as big as death. As we trudged up the steep incline, a hot dread rushed through my veins like a terrible drug I couldn't escape. Where was all of this leading? What was Steve planning? Dear God, what had I done? Suddenly, as if sensing my panic, Kay's hand found mine and gave it a comforting squeeze. She turned, eyes fizzy with a love I never thought I'd see again.
I know you only did all of this for me, but now, do you believe?
I followed her gaze high into the sky, to the approaching lights, to so many new and beautiful colors never before seen by human eyes. As they grew closer, the Sky Children joined hands and thanked the visitors for choosing them, for finally taking them home. And as our feet lifted off the warm grass, I suddenly realized a deep and frightening truth: that humans will do anything for love. They'll even believe in something. I finally did.